Welcome back. It's time for yet another Something Simple. I'm Father Pullman.
I'm Father Schumacher.
And so we're getting to a question of, do thoughts and prayers really do any good, or is it necessary to take action, I guess, in addition to those thoughts and prayers when tragedy strikes?
Yeah, well, I think someone who might ask this question is perhaps themselves, or they understand that someone else might be annoyed by this kind of Twitter feed, thoughts and prayers kind of thing, right? And I think it's important to say right off the bat that virtue signaling is not the point of thoughts and prayers, right? Jesus even says, if you pray in order to be heard, then your prayer has already achieved its purpose, right? And you're not going to have a heavenly reward if you're doing it in public for the purpose of being heard and seen praying. So maybe one way to say it is, if you're going to type thoughts and prayers, you better be thinking and praying, right?
Yes.
It has to actually be accompanied by the work that you say you're doing, because you believe, right? Why would someone do that if they're sincere? It's because they really believe in providence, that God is the master of history, and that His grace and His power is at work even in the midst of these tragedies.
I want to add another thing that I've heard. So sometimes I get people that don't want to offend anybody, or they're just the atmosphere that they grow up in or that they work in says, well, I'm sending positive energy your way. Now, maybe some of this is understood in like a New Age fashion. Catholics who have said that to me, I try and give them the benefit of the doubt that what they probably mean is goodwill. And I want to just make a distinction here. We need to have goodwill. The angels said to the shepherds at Christ's birth, peace to people of goodwill. There's a certain way it receives grace from God. But goodwill itself is still different from prayer. And so I may have goodwill for you and want what is best for you. But if I've gone that far, I should take the next step and ask God Himself to grant it to you.
Right, and as St. James says, the prayer of a holy person is powerful indeed. If in the aftermath of a tragedy there are people, affected by this and grieving and harmed by it, then it can be very useful to pray for them, especially that holy people would pray for them. People who are concerned with the things of God, pray for them, so that God's grace can be poured out upon the people who are harmed, who are grieving, who need that dispensation of grace in order to overcome this difficulty. And that brings us to the point that the last of the 7 spiritual works of mercy is to pray for the living and the dead, that you're actually doing a work of mercy for people to pray for them. It doesn't matter how holy you are, right? St. James says the prayer of a holy person, but even if you're not holy, right? Prayer is better than no prayer.
You have to start somewhere.
Right, we have to start somewhere. And but the spiritual works of mercy are paired with the corporal works of mercy. So action, physical action, some kind of physical alleviation of the suffering of another is also very much appropriate. And it would seem that if you have the opportunity of doing some corporal work of mercy and fail to do so, then you're eviscerating the power of the spiritual works of mercy. Now, obviously, not everyone has the ability to do some physical, corporal work of mercy for someone in a far-off place, right? If we hear about, there was just an earthquake in Mexico, or about the hurricane down in Puerto Rico or in the Caribbean, or, some other tragedy, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Perhaps some fundraiser or some, raising of material goods might be sent off to them, possibly. But there's not much I can do personally, directly for people in far-off lands, and yet I can pray for them. But if they're right in front of me, or if they're in my community, and I would refuse to offer some material support to them, then am I really seeking their good? You say the goodwill has to be accompanied by prayer, but if the prayer isn't accompanied by real goodwill, then maybe the prayer isn't worthwhile either.
Correct. Yeah, I know some doctors and some others that made some mission trips during the earthquake several years ago to give health care to people in Haiti. Another that taught kids in the school there in that country. So there are certain things that we can do with these corporal works, but then at the end of the day, I think those rightly done end up bringing us to our knees. Because despite all the people that I might be able to help, there's the vast majority of people that I cannot help. if I may, even the doctors that may have saved lives of some people in disasters, there are still those people that I cannot bring back to life. But God is the author of life, and He has granted a share in His resurrection of His Son. So, let us pray, and let us do what is right.